Okay, so thank you so much for bearing with us, our online audience and people in the room who've soldiered here today in a far-flung reach of Goldsmiths. And I have already briefly introduced our speakers and myself, but I'm Head of Centre for Arts and Learning at Goldsmiths. This year we have a theme of arts economies. And we've already had one brilliant drama-related event with Drama at the Heart of English. And that was with Theo, who you can see on the screen, and Maggie Pitfield, the authors who came into Goldsmiths, again braving the hybrid technology to share their book. And so we're very fortunate to be able to continue this vein of drama connection with our three eminent speakers today. So we have with us Geoff Readman, Lynda Rooke, and Danny Braverman. Geoff Readman is a consultant in theatre and drama education and chair of National Drama. Geoff has worked extensively in drama and theatre as an actor, teacher, author, and primary and secondary specialist. He's been an inspector and a university lecturer. Geoff's international experience includes theatre projects in China, India, and South Korea, and Geoff's research interest is theatre and social change. We have with us Lynda Rooke. Lynda Rooke is the current president of Equity, the UK Union for Performing Artists. Lynda trained at E15 Acting School, and she has acted in many theatre productions, for example, the RSC, National Theatre and Repertory Theatres, and numerous television series. Lynda has a strong concern for improving drama in education and workers' rights of performing artists. We also have with us Danny Braverman. Danny lectures in theatre at Goldsmiths, and he's an award-winning theatre maker and a teacher and coach specialising in educational drama and disability rights. Danny is also a widely published author, and he has just been awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award for his work in music and drama education. So the way that we're going to organise this panel event is the members of the panel have each chosen a question that's relevant for drama and education currently. And so I'm now going to hand over to Geoff to ask the first question.
I wonder, we sound very distant according to Patrice. I believe that. So I wonder whether we could bring the laptop nearer us, because I think it's the microphone on that that's picking up our voices. I don't know if that's doable with how long the leads are and all that.
It's possible. I'll move the laptop stand and see how that works.
It's very long, so.
Yeah, I don't want to bump anybody in moving this. It looks very heavy, actually. Okay. Now you can even see the laptop. That's quite unusual.
I don't know where my speaker is the other way around. How's this suit, people? Better.
Can you hear
Clearer.
us better? Okay.
Yeah, it's good, it's good.
Hey, we got there. Sorry, Jen.
It's all right.
I wanted you to heard.
So my question was, what factors are shaping the current identity of drama in education? So in my view, the identity of drama has changed considerably since 2010. I mean, I think it was on its way before then. But I think since 2010, we've definitely seen a reduction in the amount of learning theory informing drama practice, and far more learning about theatre theory informing practice. And that is now, I think, snowballing. I'm going to keep going. Is that all right? Because people have been waiting for, yeah. So, and I think that is kind of snowballing and increasing amongst drama practitioners. But what's changed the identity is I'm very concerned about a lot of things, of insidious things, hidden things that are taking place in what I call a circle of diminishing development. And if we have that circle of development, there's primary, nursery education, there is secondary, HE training. There's the whole movement of applied theatre, where it's actually taken people who were so innovative in terms of drama practice. And so we've lost a whole body of expertise. I'll try not to be gloomy, everybody, but it's going to be difficult. Okay. What really bothers me is this. The learning potential of drama is internationally recognised for its contribution to the development of a healthy, humane, empathetic, creative and democratic society. I mean, it is a statutory requirement in so many countries, and that statutory requirement in so many countries emanated from British practice, English practice, if you like. And it is included in that mandatory curriculum of countries of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, but in England not. And we've had a lot of debates about whether drama should be a foundation subject. In my view, there is no debate. Without it being a foundation subject, having that recognition, the troubles begin with timetable status, with funding for teacher training, specialists, etc., and it runs on. In the bigger picture, and this is the kind of, it's got lots of hidden things that are eating away at drama. We know that we've all had to deal with a fragmented system of multi-academies. And as those multi-academies have begun to define their own curriculum, cluster together, need to save money, or perhaps wanting to save money, the networking opportunities that used to exist for drama and sharing of practice have been reduced considerably. And more and more of the multi-academy trusts want to offer their own CPD, where they are really pushing particular philosophies and lines of learning and pedagogy. And this is a particularly acute dimension for a subject which is collaborative, reliant upon social interaction, social exchange. But first of all, I'll just begin. I mean, my bigger picture, I'm not going to raise too many because I think you want me to talk about the curriculum. So in the curriculum, we're seeing a curriculum for young people which is assessment driven. And it's been assessment driven at the expense of process and pedagogy. And uniquely for drama, we're a pedagogical art form. It's my belief that in those years of the 70s, 80s, 90s, we discovered a real pedagogical form of art that was quite unique. And in that pedagogy, we were talking about teachers, young people making theatre, making drama together, working collaboratively. And Heathcote's practice is as valid for radical theatre forms as it is for drama in the classroom. But if I have time, we'll talk about that as well. We've also seen a real misunderstanding about what is knowledge, and it's been led by the politicians. And that the definitions of knowledge seem to be about written work and content and more. You know, they've interpreted the knowledge-rich curriculum as having more information, more facts, and a success criteria is, can the children remember it? You know, and it's nonsense. It's nonsense. We've also seen, and it was there before, but a hierarchy of subjects. We've seen other subjects having greater status, young teacher trainers not getting bursaries for drama, but getting large bursaries for what they see as minority groupings of science, chemistry, etc. And this seismic shift in terms of, you know, of this hierarchy has been accentuated by the formation of EBAC. And also the other ways of judging a school. But the hierarchy, sadly, and I wish we could do something about this, the hierarchy sadly exists within the arts as well. Melvin Bragg was talking at the House of Lords. It's being paraded on social media. But all the time he was talking about music and the arts. Music and the arts. When National Drama went to the Shadow Education team and talked to them about the importance of drama, they said, oh, we do think it's important. Music, the arts, and PE. And of course, that was the way they were clustering us together. No recognition of the uniqueness of our identity. This is supported and endorsed by Ofsted, who are not inspecting drama or producing any subject research. And this, of course, leads teachers to feel disillusioned because drama teachers want their pedagogy sharing. They're excited about what they're doing in the classroom. But if Ofsted are not recognising it and not putting in and seeing their work, what does that say to them? So I see it as an ever decreasing cycle, if you like, of diminishing development that has been, and the creation of an inappropriate curriculum for tomorrow's citizens. And of course, you find me bitterly disappointed tonight because, over the weekend, it became clear that the House of Lords 11 to 16 inquiry had been, I think the words were rejected by the government and saying that they're not going to listen to it. And in my own view, that was such a courteous, such a challenging presentation to a group of really eminent educationalists who truly believed in what we were saying and who have come out with a set of recommendations that drama teachers would have welcomed and would have absolutely loved. The recommendations, I won't go through them now, it's little point, but the recommendations were that the knowledge-rich curriculum was devalued and seen as redundant. The absence of process, the abundance of written work and summative assessment had to be reduced considerably for our young people's experience. So there were a lot of really good things by some very powerful people. So this has now led to what? Well, I think the identity has now changed into, as I've said, learning about theatre, and teachers still in their training, beginning their careers, even at the halfway stage of their careers, are turning to theatre practitioners and small theatre companies. Slightly less so, I think, in the primary and early years education, but certainly they are in the secondary education. And we'll come to some of that in a moment. I've got some slides that I would like to show about the curriculum, and because the one thing that's been lost in my mind is, to my mind, is the art form of drama in education. And that is what is truly being lost. So if I may take this moment out now just to show you this, it'll take just a few moments. Thank you, Miranda. This is part of a presentation I made about the need to recognise the art and drama as part of the wider field, like musicians do, like art teachers do. They're artists first, and teachers, and equally artists as well as teachers. So drama's contribution to the whole curriculum, I think is that accessible to everybody now?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, we don't need to go through the leaping in then. So I think the areas that drama contributes to the curriculum are clearly academic. We could argue that easily. The kind of skills of exploration, research, critiquing. Sorry. Okay. I'll pause. Here we go. So yeah, academic. And I'll just say a sentence then about each one. I think I've just got time, but I don't want to take all to overstay my welcome. Yeah. So in terms of academic, exploration, study, critiquing, all of the things that we self-reflecting, setting goals, achieving standards, creating deadlines. The creative and the imaginative curriculum we obviously make a significant contribution to. I always say that it's the imagination that I'm seeking to use more than the creative dimensions of the young people that I work with. But I think it's that possibility of imagining that is being lost and is such an important part of the art form. The personal and social is huge. We're a social art form. We build on the dynamics of the young people that we work with and that we teach and co-teach with. And the development of personal self-esteem has got endless reams of academic evidence to support it. And this is why in many schools in the 70s and 80s, drama was located within citizenship, within personal, social, health education. But it is always there. And this is what is part of our uniqueness. And of course, the cultural and the community, through our performance work, we develop the school's identity, we increase the profile of the school, and we are able, through performance, to celebrate the identities, the cultural identities of the young people who attend that school, through content and through performance. But I think these things can distract us. These things can distract everybody at the moment, actually, including groups like Gecko and the Paper Birds, you know, theatre companies. They're falling back on what are the soft skills, what are the transferable skills in order to justify our existence. But at the heart of what we do is it's an art form in which learners and teachers co-create drama and theatre practice. And that seems to me we've got to keep remembering that, because it is so important. If we go down the side track of the tangential soft skills approach that we have, then I think we'll lose the argument. And that we soon will see the disappearance of drama. So all of this, I think I've had my time. Thank you very much for listening. And I think Lynda and Danny are going to respond to that.
So we were going to go to Danny next to relate to how you relate to that question in higher education that Geoff's raised.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Because we're in somewhere like Goldsmiths, where we are now, and I'm teaching theatre here. And so what happens is whatever that experience is that children and young people have got through the formal education system, they come here wanting to study drama and theatre. I see them at that point. And of course, one of the big decisions, well, there are several big decisions that get made, aren't there, when you say, I want to study drama and higher education. The first, of course, is that many, many young people for whom the meaning in their lives, what has formed their identity, what has actually got them out of bed in the morning, what they care about is drama, are then told, don't do it. Yeah. Actually, this has been the case for quite a long time. And what I've noticed over years is that there seems to be different kinds of distinction now between a university degree and a drama school, with things moving in both directions, which I think is quite interesting. When I was reflecting last week, actually, that when I was given advice, I was told not to go to drama school, but to go to university, quote, so that I had teaching to fall back on, which is a terrible thing to say to anybody. I'm so glad that I am teaching, and I'm so glad I'm making theatre, and I don't see them as two different things, the same person doing it. So the other thing that I notice is that the tendencies that Geoff's talked about, we have here a global community of students. There's a significant number of students that are coming from East Asia, North America, Northern Europe, and elsewhere, but those constituencies mainly. And they're coming with that experience of being taught theatre and not having used drama as a learning medium. Really, so I introduce students often here to, in fact, I bore my students quite a lot by saying, your starter for 10, where did Augusto Boal run his first workshops in the UK in 1985? And they say, don't know, Danny. And I say, here where you're standing at Goldsmiths University of London. I was there, it was brilliant, it was exciting. And the TIE movement was there. That was the first time I'd come across them, and it was terrifying, but really exciting. And that was a time when it was, in fact, Greenwich Young People's Theatre, I think Chris Vine and David Johnson, who Geoff and I both knew very well, who had got Augusto over to run those workshops and to open our minds up to a new form. So their history is really important, and I think when they come here, it's really important they know their history because they're artist educators, and it's important as well. But as I say, the global phenomenon of being on a production line, I think it's very easy for us today to get ground down by kind of, oh, aren't things terrible? You know, yes. And actually, the other thing I notice as they come through the doors is there is some good, amazing pockets of learning that they've come with. But I say pockets because, of course, it's not systematic across the piece. So those theatre companies that are working with education departments are doing some brilliant work that's very inspiring. We may slightly roll our eyes at the usual suspects of, you know, I'm very excited by Frantic Assembly. I've heard, I don't know how many times, but obviously their education work is having a lot of reach and is inspiring young people in making theatre. There's some great youth theatre happening still, despite everything in all kinds of places. You notice students come. I had one year group where West Yorkshire Playhouse were obviously doing something wonderful because there were some amazing students with really energetic and dynamic thinking coming through the door. Liverpool is another place that some of my ex-colleagues set up a company with 20 stories high in Liverpool that I think are doing amazing work, and their youth theatre is extraordinary. So there are pockets of great practice, and we see that come through. However, when they come through the door, there's something has shifted since the pandemic. And again, this is, I think, a global phenomenon of a mental health crisis with emerging adults. And if anyone, there's an interesting amount of research now done on this phase called emerging adulthood. It's now pretty much well researched that that there is a developmental stage between adolescence and adulthood, where, for example, you'll be well into your 20s before you develop neurological impulse control, for example. So we see this in our undergraduate students. But it's not just the biological stuff, it's the demographic stuff. There's the prospect of precarious employment that we didn't have. Those of us who were very fortunate enough to have grants didn't have the debt in the 1980s. We didn't have that. So that contributes to the anxiety. I think the existential crisis and the climate crisis contributes to a feeling that, you know, I was speaking to an old friend of mine today, that we were such a blessed generation of having not gone through, you know, a war, having not gone through, you know, we've been through the pandemic, but, you know, now, but these young people have been through the pandemic, they've got the existential crisis, they're precarious employment, they won't own their own homes, and they are anxious. And one of the things I think we have to support them with, and I might be able to speak about this later, is what do we do about it and what's at the root of the issue? And I think there's something happening here, and I heard this also from people who work in conservatoires, about why won't my students turn up? We used to turn up, and this is not just universities, this is, I won't name it, but this is a conservatoire dealing in a specialist performance skill. So where you'd have thought dedication, turning up, why aren't they turning up? And I think one of the big issues is that the motivation is extrinsic and not intrinsic. And I think it goes back to what Geoff was saying about the value of all those things in the lovely jigsaw, about the value of drama and about education being holistic. So what's important to you, I will ask, and they will say, I want to be a star in the West End. What will that give you? I don't know. Applause? That's what you want from recognition, is it? Okay. Tell me more, what else? Well, my sister is so much better than me because she gets better grades. And that philosophy that Geoff talked about the weight of summative assessment, it continues in universities. And I'm sorry, Goldsmiths, but we have here a format which has 4 different levels of how you have failed a module. That word will come to you. So if you come to your assessment and you write your essay and you're not used to writing essays, however kindly the lecturer is, they will say to you, well, at 20%, we have to call that a very bad fail. And that's your experience of your first essay in term 1. And then we go, why can't you get out of bed in the morning? Because you're not motivated, you're not curious, you're not playing to your strengths. We're still in an old-fashioned kind of sage on the stage mode of talk. We don't teach through drama in universities, even in drama. So that's my response, is that the same thing happens. I think we'll talk about maybe what can be done. I don't want to go on too long, but I would say that there needs to be a massive cultural shift. Universities, and I think drama schools may be different, are not collaborative places. The word collegiate is a one-word oxymoron. People work in silos and they work as individuals. Universities are run by committees, and committees are where ideas go to die. You know, that's there's an enormous amount of sludge in the bureaucracy. The management is top-down and driven by the cost of everything and the value of nothing, and the staff are quite demotivated. Having said that, I'm incredibly expert here. I have amazing colleagues who know what they're doing. You know, we have foremost expertise in everything: physical theatre, Butoh, African theatre, and some of the leading scholars in the world here at Goldsmiths. But they're not working in a culture where, you know, top of your to-do list is today's committee meeting, and it won't do, and that has to shift. That's my rant.
Thank you very much, Danny. So over to Lynda, who's going to talk about this question that Geoff raised in relation to the profession.
Thank you. And I'll not dwell on this one too much, because there's a lot of what my 2 colleagues here have said that I would completely agree with. Obviously, I'm an actor. I'm also president of a trade union that represents 50,000 people working in the entertainment industries. So that's not just actors, that's stage managers, directors, creative teams, you name it. And they work across from live to recorded media into variety. So there's a whole range there. Interestingly, as we've sat here today, and I've been listening to Danny and Geoff talking, the number of people that we know in common, the number of things that we have crossed over in, especially in theatre, is very interesting. I was a governor for a while at a school in Bristol where my children went. And I was governor for the performing arts and for inclusion. And there is the two things where it touches, doesn't it? Because as performing arts became under attack, and I think I cut back, and as EBAC came forward, STEM subjects were pushed forward, the uptake on performing arts decreased. And less people were encouraged to go into it. And take it up because it was seen as a precarious profession and all the things that they've said. I would say, listening to what my colleagues have said then, and I went to a drama school, so I had extremely practical training. In the whole 3 years at East 15 Acting School back in the day, I never wrote an essay. I never wrote an essay. I did classes in voice, movement, you name it. I never did anything like that. All my work, all the stuff that I did was done from actual the practical experience. Drama is practical. The performing arts are practical. You wouldn't particularly judge a musician on the fact that they will write an essay about Bach or Beethoven. What actually requires them to do is to play whatever instruments or perform or sing or whatever it is that they do, that is their speciality. There has been a degrading and underplaying of what actually performance is. And the link from education into the professional area has fallen, well, it's almost disappeared. And what you're seeing, I would argue, and I'll say more in my next piece on this, is actually that basically it has become a more elitist profession. It has become a place where if you can afford to do an internship in a theatre or whatever, you might stand a chance now of getting in through the door on something or in a television company. And that usually means money. And higher socioeconomic status, which means that you, if you come from a working class estate in Redcar, or Redruth or Redditch, you will not actually probably stand a chance of getting into the profession. It has been a disaster on all those levels. Having said that, why has it been under attack? Because the cultural or creative industries are economic powerhouses. Besides health and well-being, besides all the other things that we talked about, the creative industries last year brought into the UK 110 billion. So why is it that within our education, we do not value the performing arts, culture, music, etc., as something of value, if only for those bean counters in government, as an economic plus, because it is. Back in the day, I was at the TUC conference, and I got up, and the governor of the Bank of England then was Mark Carney. And I said to him, why is it there is not enough investment in the performing arts and in the creative industries? Because we are an economic powerhouse. We're bigger than aviation. And yet we're treated as though we're some lesser thing. And he said in response, you're absolutely right. There should be more investment, but then investment in this country is like an oil tanker. It takes forever to turn round and see the writing on the wall. To this day, they haven't really got it. And yet, when the pandemic happened, where were we all? We were all sat at home watching the performing arts on our screens, or even stream performances. And it's never been given the credit that it should. I could go on, there's a number of things I would like to link into, but just to say the impact of what we're talking about, in particular in schools, is the state sector. Let's make that differentiation. That isn't a problem for somebody who's been educated in the private sector. So I'll finish there and hand on.
Can I
Yeah,
just
just come back to
two
Geoff
very
to
quick
respond.
points. In case anybody in this audience is not aware, GCSE is 70% written work and 30% practical work. Just so that for those people who are not aware. And secondly, all that I said, which was so gloomy, does not apply to the independent sector, where great investment is going on all the time. Design contracts, building new theatres, 3 theatres I understand at Eton, although I haven't visited them. But let me finish my little section with just a quotation, if I may, because this is from a boy, a 15-year-old boy, who came with us to the House of Lords the first time that we went to speak. And this is what he said about it. Drama and theatre open windows onto other worlds. They hold a mirror up to life and allow us to see ourselves reflected in it. From this, we can learn about ourselves and the world we live in. It's a platform for free speech and makes people think, explore, communicate, and change things for the better. Noah classed himself as a non-academic student whose only success subject was drama. But that's what he said at the Lords, and I've kept that with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Geoff. Right, so our next questioner is Lynda.
Thank you. So this is my question. and you have to see it from my perspective, because as president of the union as well, I'm dealing across the 4 nations of the UK. How can we address the issues caused by the cutting of local government support for cultural organisations across the 4 nations of the UK? So I made some notes, and I have to admit I do a lot of this from a very political context, and I don't apologise for that as a trade unionist. Basically, just to put local government funding into perspective, it came under attack during Thatcher's years with the neoliberal governments that were there, her dislike of big government. She opposed the democratic power and influence of local governments relative to centralised. We did have a brief respite in the Blair years, but the real assault has come post-2008 with austerity and the banking crisis. Brexit and the pandemic have merely added to the local government woes. So, for background, I'm going to quote Roy Shaw. Now, who was he? He was the Secretary General of the Arts Council in the 1980s. And I underline 1980s. At the time, he described the cultural landscape as under-subsidised, under-patronised, undervalued, and he says, if I may coin a word, under-distributed. Well, not a lot's changed then. Let's be clear. It has never been an even playing field across the UK. Then you get the domino effect of Brexit. Nearly 200 million euros in European arts funding was lost following our exit from the EU. Local arts cuts have compounded the deterioration in national funding as councils have been seeking to tighten their budgets or by scaling back local arts and entertainment provision. The House of Commons Library analysis shows that English local authorities have been forced to cut 987 million in arts spending since 2009-10, and that's in monetary terms of 2021-22 equivalent with inflation. And this further frames that patchwork of provision that Roy Shaw was talking about across the UK. So we've got Somerset Council, 100% cuts, funding desert, and that was in 2010. We witnessed Nottingham, Birmingham, Suffolk, Scotland and Bristol all have cut or reduced their arts funding. And certain services provided by local governments are mandatory, but culture isn't. Is that because it's been a bit of a frivolity? An easy option to cut? Let's be frank, even before 2008, culture was never funded as well as our European neighbours. So my union Equity is demanding that the next government set a roadmap for bringing UK arts funding up to the European average of 0.5% of gross domestic product. So what's being missed from the argument? Culture arguably is the boost for any local economy, adding to the multiplier effect of bars, restaurants, transport, the whole nighttime economy, and not forgetting the attempt to fill the gap due to the decline in performing arts provision in state education. Health and wellbeing within communities is another area where the performing arts punch well above their weight. Now, added to these local government cuts to the arts, there's also the major problem of the pre-existent unequal distribution of arts provision across the UK. And I'm going to do something very different here. I'm going to talk about an area that's ignored a lot when we talk about that, Northern Ireland. Stormont was until very recently not meeting, and the devolved government had halted. Funding and applications for funding was stymied. So in some cases, funding was being decided on some kind of an ad hoc basis by government staff. And just last week, Roisin McDonagh, Chief Executive of Arts Council Northern Ireland, said that for too long, Northern Ireland had been poorly served by public funding. In Northern Ireland, the arts received £5.07 per capita. Wales receives twice as much, and in the Republic of Ireland, it's £21.90 per capita. And even if funding had kept pace with inflation, Arts Council Northern Ireland's budget from over a decade ago, which was 14.1 million, would now stand at 20 million. Instead, it's 9.7 million. And one colleague based in Belfast described how the entire Northern Ireland budget for the arts would not cover the running cost of the NHS in Northern Ireland for more than a couple of days. So that is how small the amounts are relative to other areas. And I've been over there in recent months, and in the last 6 months, there's been lobbying by local activists. And they've managed to get Derry City Council, Belfast City Council and Ards and Down Council to agree to support cultural funding because Stormont wasn't meeting and nothing was becoming effective. The impasse has changed. As you probably know, that Stormont is now in a place where they will actually be operating, and fingers crossed things will improve, but it's gone on for too long. Creative Scotland have led organisations in a merry dance by announcing cuts, then retracting the cuts and then reimposing them. So where's the long-term planning? Where can you put things into effect like that? And then in England and Wales, councils going bankrupt or under budgetary pressure. So what do we do about it? We demand that local arts funding should be restored using £1 billion uplift in national arts spending. The government should commit to protecting local arts budgets in real terms from then on, and ring-fence some funding for council arts conferences to involve the public in local programming. It's all about democracy. Alongside this greater resource, the current funding model should be transformed, and wait for this will really shock a few folks in Downing Street, into a federalised regional structure. And this could compose of regional cultural councils who work in partnership directly with local government, and practitioners and community representatives to make funding decisions independently of the National Arts Councils. And these bodies will be empowered with facilitating rather than gatekeeping a role in funding local arts. And this is a vital step towards building a public model of social and artistically beneficial provision, which improves on the current business model of portfolio investment. And under a new regional democratic structure of governing public funding, emphasis should be placed on expanding the ecology of independent sector productions, new public regional theatres, small-scale touring companies and TIE companies, theatre and education that is, each creating work through engagement with local communities. And this ambitious new funding model must seek to deliver a funded theatre venue in every major town across the UK. It's back to the future. And the aim is to monitor and expand the employment of local performers and other creative staff in production outside of London. And for those who already experience inadequate performing arts provision in their schools, the arts-funded desert that now exists across vast areas of the UK leads to inequalities in access and the potential for young people to consider a career in the performing arts, because you can't be what you can't see. Added to which, there needs to be a 10-year sector-specific funding strategies from the Arts Council for long-term planning, determined through consultation with practitioners and communities. We need to request a detailed report on decision-making at each public funding round, alongside data of the national portfolio organisations being funded. So it's transparency, equal access, and the ring-fencing of funding to allow long-term programming and planning for arts organisations. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynda. So to respond to that, shall we go to Geoff first, and we'll do the same sequence as we did before?
Okay, this is a hard one for us, or for me. I think we all agree, all children and young people are entitled to professional theatre experiences, and there are considerable benefits of engagement with professional theatre practitioners. And every school has a right to that. They're entitled to that. And one of the aims of the Drama and Theatre Education Alliance is indeed that we want to see all children have that professional theatre experience annually in their lifetime at school. I mean, sadly, you've indicated this. I mean, the equity of access and provision remains dependent on location, postcode, resources, and there are deserts where children never go to theatre or have any possibility of being able to do it. There's a lot of discussion at the moment as well about the relationship of employment opportunities within the theatre or creative industries, I suppose, if we broaden it, and what is drama's part in that. And there's a lot of meetings taking place about that. And the way that I see it is that all of the creative industries bring a balance and a coherence to the curriculum. The 3 to 16 curriculum as well, not just a secondary curriculum which young people are moving towards leaving school. However, I've got to say this, or maybe I should say although, not all pupils, of course, want or need to select drama as an option. They're not all going to select and go into the theatre, but they all are entitled to a drama arts experience, which is the point that we'd want to make. And therefore schools need to reflect upon this and ask themselves, what is their relationship to the local theatre? And how do they create a dynamic relationship which is workable and coming through? Similarly, we mentioned youth theatres. I'm so pleased you did, because they've been a lifeblood for so many young people, in our lifetime. So I see it as we've got to keep open doors, and it's got to become part of the curriculum, the employment opportunities that are there. All our young people, if I can put it like this, all of our young people deserve a design experience, a directorial experience, the opportunity to work on the craft of theatre lights. And we know that only a few will go forward, and that's true of every subject on the curriculum. There would be, but they have to have that opportunity to think like a designer and to work like a designer within the drama and curriculum, within the drama and theatre curriculum. We have to be clear as a school about how much prominence we're going to give to theatre craft and technological skills, so that we review them and we look closely at that relationship with the kind of learning experiences that we're offering. And I think what you've indicated is, and Danny too, there's a perceivable lack of synergy between the current drama curriculum and the creative industries. There's actually no relationship, which is worse than anything, and that's what we're all suffering as a result of that. So we need to review how the examination groups get access to workshops, all examination groups and all children, and to question, and how often are our students having a live performance is a real serious problem. It's a huge problem. And of course, the advent of things, the networks like national theatre networks and digital theatre platforms, they're all offering a substitute, which is not acceptable, but they're all offering as a substitute to many teachers who are struggling like mad and find organising trips an absolutely exhausting experience, and all of the forms that they've got to fill in. The same is true of writing and theatre writing. So it's that experience, that mindset that we need to raise that profile within our drama and education programs. Okay, I'll leave it there. Okay, it's a big question, I think, particularly for drama teachers of my generation, because originally we were self-contained, teaching in the school, and our young people went off and joined youth theatres or joined theatres. I think it's different now. And it's part of drama needing to re-establish itself, and it's part of drama seeing itself as having the same, drama and theatre having the same roots, and drama teachers seeing themselves as artists. It's all part of a bigger process of reimagining, reinventing the subject, which has to begin with you, theatre workers.
Right, thank you, Geoff. And Danny?
Yeah, so I'm a moment for me politically that echoes is that moment when Michael Gove said, "We've had enough of experts." Yeah, here's an expert, and here's a person that I want to be making policy in the next government around funding, because everything that Lynda says is absolutely bang on. And I made some notes about the amount of money that is needed is changed down the back of the sofa. We can play the games, can't we? We can go with, what tiny percentage of an aircraft carrier or Harry Kane's salary or Michelle Moan's expenses that would be. It is change down the back of the sofa that could be transformational. And so there's something that feels to me a bit malevolent about having, you know, this. The ecology has been very robust. We've seen waves and waves of kind of, you know, I remember in the 80s thinking the Education Reform Act was going to be the end of theatre and education. You know, it wasn't. You know, so things, we're quite resilient, but nevertheless. So the only game in town, of course, is the possibility that the next government in the UK will be a Labour government. So here's a couple of stories that I think have gone through my head. One was when I was working in Nottingham, in a time where, and Geoff was very much one of the architects actually of all that was going on around Nottingham arts education. And there was a really wonderful sort of virtuous circle of provision involving the Playhouse, the course that I was running with the TIE company, work that extended to actually an idea of entitlement for every young person in Nottinghamshire, with the 11 sessions that meant that every young person had access to an art session as part of entitlement. And the chief executive of the Nottingham Playhouse, I bumped into her on a train on the way down to that London here. And she said she had the ear of the potential new minister for the arts, who's Chris Smith. And she said, "You'll be very excited, Danny, about what the next government's going to do." This would have been, whatever, 1997, something like that. She said, and she said, well, there's this idea for a thing called cultural partnerships. And that would involve artists working with schools as an entitlement and embedded in every school in the country. Chris Smith is up for it. And here we're going to have an arts minister that gives a shit, which he did. But of course, by the time it happened, it became pilot schemes and not an entire thing rolled out. And there's still a legacy of that through organisations like A New Direction. So it made an impact. It wasn't a wholesale cultural shift that the dream was. So we know that whatever, and one of my criticisms of many of the Blair government was that they didn't create enough institutional shift to last a generation, not in the way, for example, that even the Wilson government did with things like the Open University, comprehensive education, equalities legislation, and so on, things that have been very difficult to dismantle. They didn't create enough of that. So I would be saying, put Lynda in charge and use the money to create some kinds of institutions. Are there people we can talk to? So another story comes to mind. I'm in Birmingham. I've started a company called Bread and Circuses. It's the 1980s. I've written a kind of verbatim play about Birmingham people's history of the welfare state, and we're short of an actor, and a young woman comes along and is terrific, and I cast her in the play, which I've directed and written in a massively self-aggrandizing way, and she's terrific, and she goes on to have a great career as a writer and as an actor, and she's now the mayor of West Yorkshire. Yeah. Yes, Tracy Braden. So we have people we can talk to. Yeah. Potentially, Thanam Debonair looks like she's going to be the culture secretary, and she was a professional musician, so she doesn't, you know, this is better, isn't it, than the revolving door. How many environment instances we have this week? You know, who's in charge of education at the moment? Can we remember? So there are people we can have the conversation with, the same conversations that Ruth McKenzie was having with Chris Smith, and something I'm hopeful, with no illusions. And what I would like to say to them is, have a look at the history of the TIE movement, and have a look at the value of ensembles. And I was lucky that sort of at the end of it, I managed to do something with a team at Stratford East. So London has, you know, I understand this sense that London gets everything. It doesn't feel that way if you're in certain parts of impoverished London at all. Even in Southwark, where you've got the South Bank Centre, there'll be estates in Peckham where they have no idea that the National Theatre and the Young Vicar in there on their manor. So even here, you know, the other side of New Cross from the university.
Dan,
So,
I'm going to have
yeah.
to move the question on quite soon.
so
we
look
can
at that,
get
look
the
at that
next-
history and don't reinvent it. Look at the value of those teams that Lynda was talking about and see what they look like today.
Sangam Debonair is my MP.
Okay.
I shall be having words.
Right, Lynda, do you want to round up on that question before we hand over?
Yeah, and basically just to say, yes, that we, and let's be honest, if you're working in education at the moment, especially higher education, can I encourage you to get people to register to vote so that they can vote? We have got elections coming up this year, both general and local. I think London doesn't have them, but outside the rest of the UK, they do. So can we encourage people to get to vote and make their voice heard? There is too much apathy around this thing. There's too much about, oh, what good's it going to do? I'm fed up of hearing it. This is your moment. 2024, there are the opportunities. You can lobby people. When they come knocking on your door, tell your students to say, okay, what are you going to do? Greens, Lib Dem, Labour, even the Tories, you know. I mean, do it. There are sympathetic ones in the Tories, not many, but there are some who will respond to the whole thing around culture and the arts. Not many, I underline that. But the thing is definitely to make sure that students and young people coming through now vote. That is their democratic right, and they should be encouraged to be involved. I'd love to see over every university posters going, are you registered? What, you know, get out to the hustings. Be heard, it's important.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Very rousing talk there. And we will do that, all as educators. So handing over to Danny now, would you like to ask your question?
I will. I won't spend a lot of time going through it because I'm aware of time and people have a long working day. I'm interested in kind of helicoptering out to the biggest issue that we face, which is the climate crisis. And how do we work towards more sustainable ways of living? Clearly, as far as I can see it, we need to go from an economy based on stuff to economy based on well-being. And there are pockets of where we see practice in that. It seems to me that this global mental health crisis that I talked about earlier is interestingly is global, and it's in every country, but it is an illness of the wealthy and people who have too much stuff. And I think that there is a central role for the arts, and particularly the arts of telling stories and making meaning in our lives, which gives us a sense of purpose. You know what? In our growth as human beings, and that's what learning, and that's what we need to work towards. I don't know how this relates to AI, because I don't know enough about it, other than I find it bewildering. But what I do know is that we need to look at quality of life, not quantity of stuff, and we need to develop a culture where we start with how can we, yes, have enough food to eat and a roof over our head, but as well as that, not more than that, but as well as that, we need to develop happiness, and I mean eudaimonic, not hedonic happiness. And I've seen so much of that through the teaching of drama and theatre. And I'll leave you with when I started to come to this. I was very, very ill about 20 years ago. I almost died, and I had to take some time out, and was really lost. And a friend of mine who's a therapist gave me a book, which was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And essentially, if you haven't read it, I encourage you. It's not a light read, but I'd encourage you to read it. But at its heart, what he says, existential psychotherapy was his thing, was that we don't pursue happiness. Happiness ensues from making meaning in our lives, and we make meaning through the arts. And we need to place the arts at the centre of our culture everywhere, because we are actually going to be happier than accumulating more gadgets and a faster car. And that's my provocation. If sustainability means prioritising well-being, how can drama in education contribute to positive mental health?
Geoff, do you want to have a few minutes on this? We're kind of being a bit more succinct with this third question to try and
Yes.
squeeze in a couple of
I'll be
questions from the
I'll be very
audience.
succinct, yeah, because I'm one of the people who think that the mental health situation amongst young people began before the pandemic, because the curriculum and the gadgets and lots of other things were affecting them. And I speak to some extent personal experience actually on this one, as my grandchildren suffered a lot. However, I think what I want to just say is that part of what the arts are in drama, and drama is an art, is that it is a human need. It's clearly evident that it's a human need. It's not just a teaching device. And so this reimagining of the curriculum, which I've talked about, it's actually part of getting drama teachers and educators to recognise that, and to not just see themselves as the curriculum and what are they going to teach about theatre, and what they're going to teach a child socially, culturally, academically, emotionally, physically. They're going to be, the child is central to their concerns. And so if we look at play of children, and we see the imaginative play of children, we learn so much. We see, don't we, that the way that, the way they come to terms with complex things that they don't understand. They co-create in their imaginative play a fictional context that will be satisfying and will help them to move, whether it be a giant, whether it be a magic carpet that's going to transport them. They co-create this fictional context to do this thing of finding happiness, if you like, finding satisfaction. And the wonderful thing about children's play is they do what we do in the theatre as well. They relive experience and they pre-live experience. So they'll relive what's happened to them, like the doctor's visit, a dentist's visit, a holiday of joy, a wonderful birthday party. They'll reenact it with their friends. And they can pre-live it as well, because Mum's talked about, we're going on holiday next week, and they don't know what it means, but they'll play holidays. Mum said, we're going to do this, so we'll play that, and they'll have a good time playing it. And it's self-initiated creation of fiction and art. I recognise it as art in that sense, which enables them to explore the reality. So, I mean, for children, play and learning are inseparable, really. And I could give examples, but time is short.
Thank you. Lynda?
Yeah, I'll just be very brief. I mean, absolutely what my two colleagues have said, but as well, drama, the human interaction, it gives you confidence. Of all things, it gives you confidence. It gives you a stabilizing, that's the wrong word, but it's what's come to mind, of what you are, your identity. And it allows you to actually look at yourself and in a way give yourself respect and dignity within this crazy world, this tech world that we live in. Once you get back to human interaction, once there's that thing of I listen, we talk, we exchange. Acting is reacting. Drama is reacting. It's a reaction to something that has gone on. And in that respect, I would say the major thing is confidence, self-respect, and it's the ability for that time to move away from that crazy technological world in which we live, where we face each other as humans. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynda. Back to Danny to round up.
So we are in, there's a welfare state handbook thing that many of us had on our shelves called Engineers of the Imagination. And actually, one of the key things that we need as environmentalists is to use our imagination to break out of the orthodoxies and to you know, that's one of the reasons we need drama in education. It's because the next generation are going to imagine a better future. And that is incredibly important. I think there was a, somewhere or other, there's a kind of Heathcote style practice, sort of commission model practice. I've probably got this wrong, just going to correct me because he knows much more about this than I do, but I think it's in Japan where every meeting that they have somebody enroll as someone not yet born. So you have to have present the manifestation of the next generation in your meeting to make decisions. How about that as a way that drama can make a difference?
Yeah.
Wow.
Incredible. Yeah, one to think about, particularly in relation to climate and sustainability.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our speakers. That's been such a wonderful presentation of all your thinking around those questions. We have a very short amount of time for questions. If some are coming up either in the room or online.
I have a question.
Okay.
Thank you for all your points. They've been all really interesting, especially coming from it as a sort of person training as a drama teacher. So my question is, what do you advise and what do you want from the next generation of drama teachers to teach their children? Is it to bring them towards a career in the creative sector? Is it to push them towards university and drama schools? Or is it a more holistic approach of, you know, not just the soft skills, but building confidence and training them to be able to commit to oracy and be able to carry themselves well? What do you think it should be, or should it be all those things? That's my question. So like 3 questions in one.
So what do you think drama educators should be training young people to be able to do?
My first. First of all, let's think about the children first, the students. Well, no, that's what I want my drama teacher of the future. That's what I want them to have that in their forefront. And then the content will be designed to meet the needs of the children in their context, you know, the economic, socio-economic context of the school, the socio-economic context of the class, and the children, the individual children within that class and the community that they may go. Okay. And certainly I want our drama teacher to look at the curriculum, and I think it does have to be reimagined, and I think there are certain things that are coming through that we all need to be thinking about. I think I'm talking secondary, by the way, just for the moment, not primary, because I think primary teachers perhaps understand this anyway, and the primary curriculum is very different, and it looks very different. There's perhaps, you know, to what I'm suggesting. So, sorry, you are a drama specialist, right? Secondary.
Yeah.
So the content will be selected in terms of the needs of the children.
Yeah.
And secondly, there will be more of a process orientation, and process will be developed. And I'm going to read a quotation, if I may. I hope everybody can hear those online. And it comes from the advisory panel of the CLA, and it's the director who says this: that the future of education should no longer be about teaching children something, but about helping them to develop a reliable compass and the tools to navigate with confidence through this world that is increasingly complex and ambiguous. And one of the things I would say to the future drama teachers, please learn to tolerate and respect and celebrate ambiguity. Please, because it is so important. And don't push your children forward into what you perceive to be theatre, what you perceive. Let them make it, and let them tolerate ambiguity when they give you their responses. That's my quick answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have a question from Theo. Theo, who would you like to direct your question to? Just answered one.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for those talks, which I could hear really well. And I'm sorry that I'm not there. That was really really great. Thank you. I just wanted to follow up really, and just to say, because Geoff, you brought up the question of drama GCSE being 70% written, and I think there is been this shift where the focus on drama has been really about proving its kind of status as an academic subject, and that's the only way that it might survive alongside in the curriculum. And that there needs to be a push really on the intellectual, the rigorous intellectual work that goes into making meaning through the art form. And I think this question of drama and education in the classroom being a pedagogy that was developed, as you talked about, Geoff, through the 70s and 80s, and that is now lost in some ways because the GCSE has become this kind of watered down vocational strange hybrid that as you say, there isn't really a synergy with any kind of, I don't really know what it is. It isn't anything that's very tangible, and it doesn't really sit alongside music and art in a way that is likely to sell it as a foundation subject. So what can we do to bring back all of the things that you were talking about why drama is so important in the classroom for for giving students a sense of purpose, making meaning, telling the art of telling stories. 30 students in a room, 30 students in a room for an hour. Drama pedagogy has worked a way of bringing all those students together so that they can make meaning and do things that will address those bigger questions. But currently at Key Stage 3, and there's drama in school. There is hardly any drama happening in the schools that I visit at the moment. And what can we do about that, about re-establishing its identity based on a lot?
I shouldn't really answer straight again. You want to go, Benny?
I wish I knew, Theo. I mean, in a way, my thing was sort of, was it Connor?
Yeah.
Looking at Connor's question, maybe the same thing. We know that we always work creatively within constraints.
Yeah.
And the constraints, and let's say let's use that idea of engineers of the imagination and say that limitation, it's in some ways a stimulation. Let's use that as a challenge. And I'd like our drama teachers to be subversive. I'd like them to break rules. I'd like them to, if they're going to read some theory, they should read Teaching to Transgress, bell hooks. And which is full of drama stuff. It's full of, one of the things that frustrates me here in the university is give me your scheme of work in the summer term for what you're going to, in the summer holiday for what you're going to teach in the spring term. I want to know all the detail of every 10 weeks, of the whole of the 10 weeks. And I'll say, I don't know the students. I need to build a rapport. Bell Hooks talks about improvisation, being in the moment, connecting. So, as teacher and artist, we're the same person, and I would say, be subversive, try and get the stuff done. Some of them will go into the industry, some of them won't. And recently I've been thinking about people I've taught over the time, and honestly, it's really wonderful that one of my ex-students from Nottingham is a paramedic. I'm still in touch with, and it was really meaningful for her that she did that work. But well, I'm glad she's a paramedic, and I'm sure everybody else is every day. So it's not. Yes, that will happen, but it's about the whole person.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we've got one more hand up. Patrice, would you like to ask your question?
Sorry, yeah, no, it's sort of following on. It's just something that I wanted to add, if it's okay, and that's about the fact we've got a government change happening, we hope. But if you go back, the thing that caused the biggest damage to drama, I think, was when it got put inside English instead of being an art form in its own right. So there isn't actually the preparation for drama towards Key Stage 4, whereas other subjects actually get the development through Key Stage 1 to 3 before it becomes Key Stage 4. A lot of damage happened to drama during the Labour government, actually. So I think there is a massive challenge on, and I think, which was brought out earlier, the academy chains, which are silos. That's also a major. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to take too much time. Sorry, because I realise we've gone past the time. But I just hope. My other concern is, it's all about quality as well. Whether it's drama teachers, theatre educators, or whatever, it's about continuity, progression, and people knowing what they're doing when they're working with children, as well as knowing what they're doing with theatre if it's during school time. So it's not just a club that, I live in a rural area. Children can't stay after school. They've got to get on a bus and go somewhere else. My daughter's down in Hertfordshire. Luckily, they can afford it. A lot of people can't afford it. The children, they're getting it in drama club. They're not getting it in school. So, a bit of research around what's actually being provided as a starting point, would really be quite interesting. And yeah, we've got to pin the right people in whatever government's in. But just because it's a change of government, historically, I can't say I'm impressed with what happened with the Labour government and drama at all either. So there we go.
Thanks, Patrice. Yeah, Lynda, you wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, just to say that I think that once, as you say, it got involved in and brought under English, I think to push back against that, I do believe there has to be much more focus on non-text based work, where it isn't always about Shakespeare. Can we just put that one in, that elephant in the room there? Because yes, we know he's wrote some great plays, or some of the people he worked with wrote great plays, but it cannot be the be-all and the end-all of everything. What engages people actually has to be the ability to do the improvisation, to pull together a project where people are playing different parts and they interact and grab something and say, I am now carrying whatever I'm carrying, I'm the horse, or whatever. That you take on those characters and you do them and you commit to those things and work with character work, etc., rather everything always being text-based. And on the back of that, then you get the exams that go with it, where you have to quote these things about, be it, Macca's or Romeo and Juliet, whatever the heck it is. It has, in a way, it's been one of the assets of speaking the English language, and one of the things that has destroyed drama for many people in schools, because it can be extremely dreary if you don't see it live. If all you ever do is sit there reading the text from which you have the answers. I come from a bit of the world where there was no theatre. There was no theatre in my town till actually after I'd left. So I never saw Shakespeare performed. So everything was a dry adaptation from something that I'd read in a book. Same with poetry. I'd never seen poetry be read or performed in that way. And I think it's really important that those are the active things that kids experience. We as the union, I don't think we have the time, but we as the union have put forward a number of things, including proposals about funding schools, etc., for theatre trips, for the fact there should be theatres in every town to allow that experience. I will shut up because time's at a full, but that for me is the interpretation. And don't get me wrong, I've worked for the Royal Shakespeare Company, but it cannot be the be-all and end-all. Let's be honest, it's a tourist factory, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I just think there's so many wonderful points being made. We could talk all evening, but unfortunately we have to nominally keep to time. We've gone 5 minutes over, even though we're 17 minutes late in starting. So thank you so much for bearing with us at the start of with the IT, and just fascinating conversation from Geoff and Danny and Lynda today. And we have recorded this, so it will be available to view again if you would like to. And we will share our recording with our drama PGCE students here, and amongst PhD students who are interested in performing arts as well. So we'll have an ongoing audience. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for our online audience and our audience in the room.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.